Welcome to the Local Farmer Podcast, where we invite you to join us on our farming journey. Whether you're a seasoned farmer or you're just getting started, we are here to learn and grow together. Our goal is to help encourage, inspire, and equip the local farmer. So let's grab our boots and let's dig in. All right, hey, welcome to the Local Farmer Podcast. I'm Brandon.
I'm John.
And hey, we're excited. Once again, this is going to be just a strictly audio podcast as we are working on our podcast studio. We're excited with what that will bring with guests and everything. So, hey, maybe you're running, maybe you're working, maybe you're driving. This will be a good one to listen to. I think this is going to be a fun one, John.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be good. We're going to talk about our fails that we have learned thus far. We have some amazing stories to update you on. Some really cool. No, it wasn't cool, actually.
Not at the time, but you know, the best stories are always those that...
Yeah. I love the fact that we actually get to talk about them. We experienced them. We haven't really talked about them yet, though. But hey, we're going to be able to learn from our mistakes, the things that we have learned. So this is all about the mistakes that we have made and the things that we have learned from that, the things that we are going to have and will implement moving forward. But, you know, I guess one of the positive outcomes of the fails is we failed small in a way that we don't have a fully functional with animals on property and all that stuff. So anyway, that's to come. Before we dig in every time. Before we dig in, hey, follow us on our socials and comment and all that stuff, right?
Yep. Check us out. I mean, this is going to be entertaining. Our stories, get on there and make fun of us, whatever you want to do. We don't care. We just want to hear from you. So, you know, I was thinking you keep missing the dig in.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're on stage at church doing the announcements, you need to use the dig in instead of dive in. Like let's
dig into the message. Yeah. I could totally start trying to put that in my.
It would be funny because people would be like, why is Brandon saying dig in?
Yeah. No, that's actually really good.
Some
good and random. Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about our fails. Let's just dig right into.
There is a plethora of those.
A plethora.
That's a lot. It means a lot.
I know what plethora means. Okay.
I know you use it all the time.
I use plethora. It is in my go-to big words to look smart. Little belt. Hey, you know what I was thinking the other day? Before we dig into this, I need to get a belt buckle. You know, I need to get a belt. I may have said it on the podcast. Have I said it on the podcast?
And we were driving, like on our last podcast, we talked about the Michigan trip.
Yeah.
And so we're listening to some of them because, like, my wife don't get much opportunity to listen to them. And then, so we're riding up through there, and she laughs. She laughed so hard. I was like, "You're driving. You gotta."
Yeah.
She was like, "I can't. That's hilarious. We're gonna have to get you a belt buckle. Maybe somebody will send us one.
Maybe
we got cups, all kinds of stuff.
Hey, yeah. Last week we got some awesome cups. And once again, who is that from?
Alan Nichols.
Alan Nichols.
Yep.
Thank you once again for these cups that we're drinking out of currently right now. Really appreciate that. Nice little gift. Yeah, if you want to send me a belt buckle, I will totally. I don't own a belt buckle. I don't own one. How many do you have?
Do you have a belt that goes on? Because some belts will accept it, some won't.
I'm gonna need myself
because you can change
a leather belt.
One belt with the buckle with the snaps or whatever. You can change your belt buckles out.
Yeah, if you're listening and this is your first one that you've listened to, just giving you an idea. John has all this stuff. He's got the boots. He's got the jeans. He's got the belt buckles. He's got all that stuff. I don't. I'm not. I don't.
That's okay.
I don't have that stuff. So if you want to send me a belt buckle, I will totally own it. Well, I forget if we talked about it for the Father's Day gift, the hats, right? Which I lost.
You thought
by the way.
About.
So
yeah, you did. That's a fail.
That is a fail. Yes.
So let's just open with that fail.
Okay. So we got Father's Day. Well, this is all part of it.
Okay.
So I, s- I, I thought my wife was getting me a gift because we started the farm, and we got our first animals, which were pigs. And I don't know. I just think it's custom. I mean, like, right, when you ride, don't you get belt buckles? Like,
Yeah, if you win.
if you win, right, you get a belt
Yeah.
buckle.
Oh, daughter's got a couple of those.
Well, hey,
And you wear it with pride. I mean, like,
bro,
boom, it's like a trophy on your
but in
britches.
my mind, we won. We started the farm.
Yeah,
And
we
so, like, my wife's like, I got you something special. We never guess what it is. And I'm like, she got me a belt buckle. She got me a belt buckle. I'm so excited. Like, I get, because I could go out and buy one. You know,
That's not the same.
That's not the same.
Yeah.
So receiving it. And so I'm like, I'm getting a belt buckle. And then I open it up, and it's our farm name on a hat, which was awesome.
Awesome.
It was awesome. I was like, man, this is amazing. This is so cool. She said, what did you think I was getting you? I said, I thought you were going to give me a belt buckle. And she started laughing and said, I would have never bought you a belt buckle. So I created this whole like scenario in my head that my wife got me a belt buckle, and that didn't happen.
Oh.
But the fail of the hat was I took you helped me work on my boat, and we took it out actually that same day that we fixed it just to test it. And right off the bat, I forgot my hat was on,
Man.
and I took off, and it went, and there was no finding it after that.
We must have fixed it well. Blow your hat right off.
Bro, I was so mad. My wife said, "You're not getting another one." I said, "That makes no sense. Like I'm getting another one." So
Like you're getting punished.
I know I need to order another one, but that was a
Yeah.
fail. I
Yeah.
lost a hat.
Yeah, you're not getting another one. You're in trouble.
Anyway, send me a belt buckle. I will totally wear it.
You want it? You should have one that looks like a pig.
A pig?
Yeah.
Because that's my thing. Yeah. Speaking of that, so let's talk about our fails.
Oh man.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with water?
Oh yeah, we can start water.
Yeah. So there's an abandoned house on the
Yeah.
property, right?
Yeah, so we had a lot of pluses. We had a water line run to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we branched off that and found real quick there's a water leak somewhere.
Which we didn't know. Like that was the other thing. We were out. I remember because Lindsay was the one that my wife was the one that said, "Hey, there's something wrong
Yeah, there's
here."
like a carport attached to the house, and so we utilize that carport. We got the antique tractor under there that we do use, but our feed and everything stays in there. And your wife was like, "Is there supposed to be water coming through the block wall?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I went over there, and it was literally like there was a crack in the wall and a waterfall coming through there.
Yeah.
So
we were having to turn it on and off from the road, just utilizing what we could to fill.
and it was like so the fail with it was absolutely, I mean, you got an issue. So like we all do. I mean, okay, it's working right now. We'll get to that when we can. And it just got to where it just got worse. I mean, like we had no water pressure. And that happened a week you were gone. And then we left. That's one of the things we were talking about. We didn't get into some of the stories.
No,
but
we didn't.
You were gone, and then we had to run to Michigan, and so Lindsay got the farm, and there's no water. And my daughter went over there and helped, and she was like, "There's no water," and I'm like, "What's wrong with you, y'all? It's pinched, you know." And I get over there, and I'm like, "There, it's pinched." I couldn't find a pinch in the hose, but then even after I unpinched it, it was like, "There still ain't no water." So that was a big fail.
Well, and at the time, we weren't needing it. Like we were able to set up our water to where we had kind of a trash can that had some a nipple on it, like a pig nipple, where they were able to get water. So
they had plenty of reserve water. So they were fine. It wasn't a dire situation. I mean, obviously in the moment, but then we had to go. Yeah.
So at that time, we found a fix to okay. So we'll have to only fill it up like every 3-4 days, and that was going well. So we found that solution, even though we didn't have the full water pressure that we did, and so the fail was the fact that we finally got it turned on, thinking that we were good, and we didn't, and we kept honestly putting it on the back burner.
Yeah,
and we found a solution by, hey, the way that we're doing water, we really only need water to fill up every 3 to 4 days until we kind of put a wrench in the system and changed up some things. And by changing those things, changed everything.
Yeah, it was like a snowball effect.
It was. So moving into, so that was a fail. And
Well, should we update the water situation right now? Does it matter? Do they even care? But
I don't know, but we can tell them.
it ended up real quick. The water line, galvanized line to that old house, got bigger and bigger, deteriorated. No water pressure. We dug it up now. We had a couple of blips with that, trying to get it temporary to get water for that day, and then now it's somewhat of a permanent fix. And we've got our hole dug for doing our irrigation to our automatic water. So big open hole right now, but the water's fixed good now. So we got water. So
yeah, still turning it off by the road just in case, right?
Yeah, we don't fully trust that galvanized line, but it's from there to the road. So that's one of those things you get into. I mean, it's a lease property. Not that I'm band-aiding, but that's quite an investment to pull the line all the way to the road, which the homeowner actually has a line there. So we may do that when we rent the machine and do all our irrigation. We'll do a permanent fix. That way we don't have to worry about it. So that's down the road. What about
so the fail once again was we honestly we just kept putting it off because we kept finding a different type of solution, and then it finally got to where that we had to fill it up almost every single day, and so we had to fix it. And so anyway, moving to the next fail, which is actually the start of the story, to be honest.
The start of the story.
So a friend of ours said, hey, we want to give you a male pig. We know that you've got 4 females. We want to give you a male pig. And we were like, hey, awesome. Like, we've got the property for it. Let's do it. So we kind of put a plan together of like, okay, so, we're going to move the girls on pasture now. So we're going to put the wire out. We're going to get their area ready to go. And I think I was in Africa when he had texted me and said, hey, like, any update on when you could pick him up. And I kind of threw a date out, and throwing a date out puts a deadline on something else, so the start becomes a deadline. And I go out, well, first we go out and we put the fencing up for the girls. So we go out, run 2 lines of wire. What type of wire was it?
It was a really thin poly wire. And I've used it for horses and didn't like it for them because it's too small diameter. But I thought it worked great for the pigs. So and you could roll it back up. And so if we need to move it or anything, that's our finished goal. We want to be able to drop a wire, move them over this pasture, boom.
So to update you on that too. So like we have a 25 by 25 training pen. That's what this is supposed to be for us, to train the girls on wire. And once they learn that, then we move them on pasture. And that's what we were doing. We were moving them out of there and putting them on pasture. We went ahead, we put the wire out, we did all of that, and we just couldn't get the electric where we needed it. And part of the problem was we didn't test it correctly either.
That's right. Well, then I think another fail is we got that was my idea, was the easiest way to get them over there is to let them go under the training pen fence, under the wire that we trained them not to go through. And so I think immediately in their mind, they're like, oh, well, now I can get through here. And so when they got into the wire and the electric's not properly done, they were just pushing through that wire.
Yeah, they were getting out. And did we do that the same day?
Yeah.
We did it the same day.
We brought Boris in, and we have Boris in the back of the trailer.
That's right. You're right. So we're going to talk about what we learned as we go too. But you're going to hear me say this multiple times. Pigs are way smarter than you've ever imagined.
Oh gosh, yeah.
People say that, but like until you experience it, which we have definitely. So we didn't test the wire. And we kind of put a deadline we actually had a plan, to be honest. We did have a plan, but things just
We,
kept getting in the way and moving it back.
we had a plan A, and that's it.
And yeah. Well, and it kept getting moved back until there was no other way to do it because I went and picked up Boris. Now, we'll just talk about that before we move on. We went out to get Boris. Now we'll keep talking about the wire. So we moved the girls over to wire that was not hot. It was lukewarm.
Yeah.
And they learned real quick that they can go underneath the wire, even though we had a 2-strand.
Yeah.
And so we moved them over. That was a feat in itself, and hilarious to watch us trying to get them under the fence, which we know now that we'll never do that again. Getting them into a new area that they're already curious about. And now they see this freedom, and the line's not hot, and so they were able to get out. So
Yeah. So one thing we learned from that is you're absolutely right. New area, they're gonna test it.
That's
It's
right.
like a dog. You take them to a new place, put them in. They're gonna check that fence row. They're gonna check. So
if that fence was hot and they touched it, they would have been perfectly fine. They'd
They
be like, oh, yep, that's just wire. That's what we're used to.
yeah, and we were running in that dry period too,
That's right.
and we ultimately learned
Yep.
from that whole experience because the training pin wire failed.
It failed too at the same time, and that's where our head was scratching. We couldn't figure out. Oh, it must just be the wire. That's what we thought, and then we started looking at the other wire that had been working.
Yeah.
Stopped working.
We changed boxes and
We
everything.
changed-
Nothing
yeah.
was working.
Yeah, that's right. And what did we learn about like why it wasn't working?
So we did actually learned. I watched a video. A lot of people may know him, Greg Judy, and he does a lot of rotational grazing stuff like that. He uses a lot of polywire, and I ran across a video of his on YouTube. And I've done electric wire forever, and usually you put it in, you run your wire, you do your ground rod, it works. And a lot of times whether there's dogs, horses, cows, whatever, they get used to it, and you really can turn it off, But what we found out, I didn't know, like I've never really run into that or whatever, is when the ground dries out, they don't get grounded. So because the concept is the box is grounded, and then the hot goes out, like the positive lead will go out, and it pulses in that wire. When the animal touches it, they become the conductor between the wire and the ground. What happens when the ground is super dry? It's almost like it's insulated. So that electricity is trying to get back to the ground. So we learned that. And there's a couple of ways you can go around that in a dry environment. You can put a ground wire but they have to touch the hot wire and the ground wire. So the electric's going through them back into the ground wire. So we learned some of that. We learned our ground wire wasn't sufficient. You went and picked up a ground rod. We wet around
I picked
it and
up
everything. So
a
it's
6-foot ground rod. I even picked up a bigger box that we still have because we're going to need it at some point. So I decided to leave it. But we were trying to figure out like what in the world, because now what was working is not. Something is wrong.
And the biggest thing was the moisture in the ground where we had dried out. So there you go. Now we know.
Yeah. So we had an issue with our electric, and then we figured out what the problem was, and it all stemmed from bringing Boris on and introducing Boris to the story. So we get Boris, we bring him on to put him in the training pen, and we're like, hey, he's been in a barn all his life. He should be used to the small space. He hadn't been trained on wire, so we were just putting him in there, and then we were going to figure out what we were going to do with him. The girls were putting the process into place of the pasture side. So the girls get out, and we go out there. We get him back in. Still no solution to the wire at that point. And was it 1 day or 2 days later with Boris?
It was maybe 2. Yeah, because it wasn't long.
Yeah, so Boris's wire still wasn't working at this point. And same thing with the girls. So I went out there. I forget why I went out there. I think I went out there because the water, something like that. and the girls were in. My wife texted me while I was out there and said, "Look at this." No. That's not it at all. So sorry. I was trying to fix the water. Okay. So I fell.
Oh yeah, you
Remember
got
that?
impaled by that thing.
So I fell into the trash can that we just described with the nipple. I was trying to fix it because we had to make a duplicate one because Boris was coming, so we had 2 of them. So anyway, I fell, and just this iron rod was like I was falling in on top of an iron rod, and just luckily moved my hand and pushed it to the side and fell into this mud pit. Like, it was scary, but then again, I started laughing at myself. And we've got a camera on property, and I was like, I'm gonna go back and see so I can send it over to John because this is actually pretty funny. Well, when I go back to look, probably 20 minutes before I had got there, the girls were out walking around the property, and they just walked right back in when I got there.
Put themselves back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So I would have noticed that if it wouldn't be for the fact I looked, So anyway, that was another thing. I'm like, dude, these girls keep freaking getting out.
Yeah.
We leave. I went out 4 times that day, because then we went back out with you, me, and Jennifer, and that was you and your screaming at the pigs, running at them to get them back into.
Before that, though, we had went out and no, it was after it that I grabbed the one by its legs.
No, that's later.
Okay.
That's later. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But so we get them back in to a non-secure wire still, because at this point we still have not secured. Like, we were working on it and trying to figure it out. We were even taking a water hose, bro, and we were watering that ground, like just trying to figure out. And once again, this wasn't a deep ground.
Yeah.
It wasn't that deep. So at this point, we still were scratching our heads and not knowing what was going on. Fast forward to Boris. So when we got him,
At some point, we put them both, all of them in the training pen, because the girls.
we did, but that's a little bit later. So we were told Boris was 400, about 400, 450 pounds. Okay. He's a big boy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big boy. We get him in there, and right away he busts the water. He leans up against the nipple and busts the water, and he just...
That's all he has to do is lean on something.
It barely touches something and breaks it. So he busts that. And so anyway, so there's that thing that he broke. So late one night, I'm in the shower. I remember this, actually. I was in the shower, and Lindsay said, "You got to go." I said, "What?" Lindsay's my wife. She goes, you got to go. He's out. And there's Boris on the other side of the fence. So I go out there, and I think we leave him out that night, or did I get him in that night?
No, we got him in. The first few times, we got him right back in.
Yeah. So that was when we decided to put the girls back in the pen, and we put Boris in there with them. He broke out again. So once again, wire wasn't working correctly. Now,
that night, then the next night we didn't get him in, because that was when we got the girls in. And we said, "To heck with him."
That's right,
because he was worn out, because we chased him all over the place. He ain't going nowhere. Just leave him in. We'll get him tomorrow. But we got the girls in by.
So let's tell the story of chasing down them. So this is what I would say about the girls. The girls know us.
Mm-hmm.
They know us. They will follow us. Now that we introduced a male big boy, he's going to go off and do his own thing. He doesn't really know us.
Yeah. And
they follow him. And they're in the woods that night. And we start losing our minds.
Oh, gosh. My mind, I lost my cool. I mean, that thing aggravated me to death.
I don't think I've seen you like mad before. You had told me that like your family calls you a name or something, right? Like when you go crazy.
Oh, they say you just go black.
You go black, yeah. So I haven't seen that yet, and I started seeing it that night when I'm like, bro, just calm down. Like we'll get him. We'll totally get him.
I mean, after so many briars and running through poison ivy and there spider webs in the face, is like, all right, I'm done with you. You're about to go. You're about to.
You're about to get the knife, yeah. So then you ended up grabbing one of the girls' back legs.
Yeah, and we were trying to hurt them, you know, or get them to follow us, and it's dark, and he wasn't, and I think they were torn between him and us, and so finally they got into a thicket, and I was just by that point I was black. I didn't care.
Yep.
I didn't care how many briar cuts I had or nothing. I
I
reached in there and grabbed her legs
Mhm.
and started pulling her, and I was like, oh, and then the other three followed him.
Yeah.
So and then you took over halfway through because I was
Yeah.
like, trying to get
Yeah.
them all the way back to the
I mean,
pen.
she's screaming
Yeah.
like screaming bloody murder. Like, think of a scream. That's what it sounded like.
Oh, pig screams are
Pig
horrible
screams,
anyway.
yeah.
And she's doing it as loud as she
Gosh.
can do it. But
And we're trying not to like injure her because like she's trying to fight, and we're like, I don't want to rip something out of socket here.
yeah, but we got both back legs and we're
Mhm.
pulling her backwards, and there
Yeah.
really wasn't nothing she could do.
No.
And she couldn't hurt herself. She didn't try to twist or anything. She basically just walked backwards on her fronts. But got her in.
Got her in. Decided to leave Boris out.
Mhm.
And so that is when Boris became very comfortable with. Because once we did that, once we got the girls in, they did get out one more time, and that was a flaw on my end of opening a door and figuring that out. And then we got the electric working.
Yeah.
So once we got the electric working, we're back to where we started, a little bit less than, meaning I had to get the trash can fixed. I got it fixed. The water was good. And now the girls are kind of back to square one, and Boris is on property now.
Yeah. Well, at one point was that the time that he just no, because you were gone and you were leaving for Africa, and you put him back in the training pen. We had them all
The
back in the
day
training
before, the night before, it was 10 o'clock at night. I got him back in.
Yeah.
And that was 2 days probably on property at that point, I think.
Yeah, and you did that because you were like, I don't want him to have to deal with it. So you're trying to.
Yeah.
And I show up the next day, and
Train
I
wreck.
mean, he
Rip.
has bent over T-posts and everything.
Yeah.
He come out of there, and then the girls got them in pretty easy. They weren't a problem. At that point, we're like, I don't think our fence is structurally going to handle him, and he ain't going anywhere. It's in the middle of 35 acres, and he's got woods and a pond right there. So we just, we had talked to him. We decided just to let him. He's free range,
Yeah, so then we shifted to, hey, we're just going to leave the girls where they're at.
Yeah, because we're back to training them.
That's right.
After that wire fiasco, we're like, okay, they need to spend some more time in here, learn this
Yep.
wire again.
And then once we got the ground rod, the right ground rod, and we had some rain, everything got back to where it needed to be when it came to the wire. So they're back where they needed to be, and everything was fine when it came to the water and the feeders. We put both feeders in there, so now they had 2 feeders. With Boris, we would go out every single day,
Every day.
and we would give him 5 pounds of food.
Yep. In his little spot. I mean,
He knew his spot.
He knew his spot. We'd go over there and we'd feed him, and he just hung out in the woods. And I thought, he's living the best life. He's got him a pond he can waller in, and
Which he was.
And he made him a mud hole like at the
Mhm.
edge of the woods, and he'd lay in there some, and then had him a place in the woods, in the shade.
Yeah, I mean, you could call for him, and he would come. So I mean, like it was. We started having conversations, and we already kind of knew up in the air. Okay, he's 450 pounds. These girls, when we want to get them pregnant, will be, close to 300 maybe. And he's just so much bigger than they are. I don't know if he would be the right way to do it when it comes to breeding.
Mhm.
And so we had started having conversations. Hey, we're probably just gonna have to process them. We're just gonna have to go ahead and
Well,
and get
through
them off
this
property.
time though, we met one of the neighbors. One of them's my aunt Willie, and then we met Miss Glenda Cox because she called and said,
She
"Hey,"
called, but
because Boris was going up, and she had seen he was getting in the garden.
Mhm.
He was going up into the carport. That's another fail we didn't discuss because he got in. We had the feed in bags, in that carport, and he got into the stack of feed bags.
he did. We have like a baby pool that we were just kind of storing the bags in, not like opening them up, just the bags in under the carport. in the baby pool. That way, if there was water, whatever, that they would still not be wet. And he found his way in there and ripped open a bunch of bags.
And we went around the world there trying to gate that off and everything else.
And
that
he would
didn't.
apply, he would do all that. So we found a solution how to store the bags in a different spot that he would never be able to get to. And you're right. Like, so we started having the conversation about like, hey, should we not? We kind of went back and forth. And that's when he started pestering one of the neighbors.
And she loved him.
No, she loved him.
Yeah,
but
she called one night, and I had to work early next morning, 3:30. I had to be up. And so she calls, and she had called me prior to that and said, I think he's coming up here, and he's been laying in the condensation beside my air conditioning unit. And I'm thinking, oh gosh,
if he knocks that off,
yeah. So then she called me one night, and he was up there rooting around in her yard, and we're talking. We think this pig's 450, 500 pounds, and he's across an open field at least 500, 600 yards.
To give you an idea of what he looked like, he looked like a mixture, like body structure of like a baby hippo and a baby rhino.
I'll post that picture where he's standing in front of my dually, and he's as big as my truck.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like insane.
It's insane.
So at that point, I think we're like, it just ain't working.
That's right. It's just not working, and we've kind of already decided how we wanted to do our breeding process, and so he was already not within that goal. He was kind of just thrown into the mix of, oh well, maybe, and then now we knew it was right, and that night when it came to him wallowing right next to her air conditioning unit, we both said, like, okay, we need to we need to send him off.
Yeah, because we don't want to pay for that.
Exactly, because damage could have been a lot more. I don't think he would ever hurt anybody. Like, he was a really nice.
Oh yeah, he was
nice
gentle,
guy.
but like you said, I mean, even with our water thing, I mean, he just bumped something and it's done. He's so big.
It was just what it was. So we made the decision. Okay, we're going to process him. And so, of course, all that goes into play of how, A, do you get them? B, where do you take them? Like, all of these questions. So we started having to research processors, which for us, we weren't necessarily ready for because, we weren't ready. We haven't landed. We kind of had. We've landed on our beef, but we haven't really landed on like where we wanted to process for pork. And so you and Jennifer started figuring out, okay, so where could we take like kind of an emergency situation?
Well, just a little bit in on the pork processing. The same people that do our cattle do pork. They don't do it as in high volume, so they need a week's worth of pork, and they'll run a week of pork.
Yeah.
They're also a year out on our appointments.
Yeah.
So when you like, hey, we need this guy, we got to do something with him quick. We're either going to put a ton of money and try to fence him in, or we're gonna move him. So the other thing with pork is on a processor, on cows, you don't have any, you just bring back beef. But with the pork, there's stuff that goes into seasoning in the sausage. There's curing of bacon, curing of the ham. There's all those things. And not all processors do that with the pork. They'll cut them up, and then it's your responsibility to get everything else done. So we were trying to look to, there used to be a place that did that. I had a pig done years ago. Anyway, I couldn't find them, but we did run across a processor not far from us that could get him in, which is a godsend for sure.
Yeah, and you said that, I mean, I never dealt with them, but you said they were really nice over the phone.
Absolutely.
And willing to work with us too.
Yes.
And
we didn't either. So, and just a little backstory for our listeners. We had a cow done a year ago by a new processor that was close to us. And we thought, oh, this would be great. Right down the road, blah, blah, blah. A horrible experience. Not just in one way, but multiple ways. So a processing part of it is very important. You've got a lot of time, money invested into this product. And if your butcher screws it all up, don't make the cuts right, don't get the vacuum seals done, overcharges, whatever. I mean, In that case, it was all the above. But you know, so that's a very important part. So we were kind of nervous about that, but we ended up finding, and they did a great job. But let's get back to where the story was. So we found them and got a date.
Yep.
So
we got a trailer.
We got everything ready to get him loaded.
Yep. We got a trailer. We
keep
got
in mind,
cattle panel.
In this story, he's loose, so we're not backing up to a pen and getting him in there.
And I'm going to be honest, I really underestimated the situation of trying to get him. I think anyone listening that has ever tried to move an animal that is free, and you're having to basically, like, I'm going to try to make sure I give you a picture here and answer a question you might have. No, we could not wrangle him. Like, there is no, you don't understand. Like, he's so big, you can't put like him on a leash and pull him. You can't get behind him and push him. There's none of that. It had to be all himself, his decision on his time to do it. And we go out there and we set everything up, and even we had a first attempt that went really well.
Oh yeah, we thought, well, this is going to be easier than we thought,
and it wasn't.
Mm-mm.
It wasn't. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think a lot of it, I haven't said this out loud, you were the problem.
Yeah. Oh, he didn't like me.
You were the problem. Yeah, you were the problem. One of my favorite things. So at this point, you know, we could tell you multiple different like moments that we had where we almost had him in, and then he was out of the trailer. We were ready. There were moments that we weren't ready, like all that stuff. But some of my favorite moments that just kind of like eased the pain of that time was John in the woods running around, not saying anything. You weren't saying anything, and you weren't screaming or anything, but I could hear you running, and I can hear him running, and like you're like trying to catch him off, and it's just like a scary movie almost. Like, you know, there's something in the woods, you just don't know which. Like, it's almost like you both got in a fight, and who's going to walk out alive? I don't know. So those were some. You ended up getting some poison ivy on you, or ant bites, right?
Ants
got you.
Dude, that was a fail. Like I mean, it's weeks later, and I still got like spots that itch sometimes. But they got in my boot. But when we talked about me going black, and you know, I'm not going to like murder somebody, but maybe this pig. But
yeah,
no, like when I got my adrenaline's going, and my mindset was, don't let him get deeper in the woods. I need to get him pushed back. So he would go one way, and I'd run through the woods and cut him off, and he'd go back the other way. He was trying to get around me and get deeper in the woods. And I was blasting through trees, and I didn't, at that point, I didn't care. I didn't feel it. And I'd stand there, you know, and he'd start to ease one way, and I was just kind of blocking, right? Trying to keep him back there where you and Jennifer were. And I guess I got in an ant pile, and I didn't even know it. Like, my wife's like, how do you not?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm talking like 30.
I thought it was poison ivy, bro. Like,
I mean, my legs.
How would you not feel that?
You said you look different today because I don't wear shorts a lot.
Yeah.
But I've literally, it's 90 degrees, 95
You're
degrees.
letting your legs out, yeah.
And I've had to wear pants because I look like a tweaker because of my legs. And they're my feet, too. I sent you a picture of my feet. And I mean, I look like chicken pox on my feet because they got in my boot.
If they didn't have the chicken pox on there, I would have put them on some sites and made some money off that feed, bro.
Yeah.
Goodness.
So it was a bad deal, but I just heading him off, you know. Yeah. But now this is after we had him almost in the trailer. Actually, Jennifer had him in there.
No,
we didn't get to the door in time.
We didn't get to the door. It was her fault too. She wouldn't get in the trailer. I mean, so there's a lot of blaming here we can do. Let's just do it.
You know,
Let's do it.
You're probably stretching,
but you're right. We tried, and he knew. He knew.
Well, when we got there, when we did try, we were trying to get to the door.
Yeah.
And he is in there, and he turned around and looked at me, and I've got a cattle prod in my hand. Remember?
Oh, I thought you broke the cattle prod at one point, but
no. Well, he turned and looked at me.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Don't go back in there." Well, he come out and started towards me, and I thought I'll turn him around, and we've got horse cattle, like cattle panels, like from a round pen, funneled into this trailer. And I thought, I ain't letting this pig buy me. And I shocked him with that cattle prod square in the nose.
Oh, yeah.
And he almost broke the stick pushing into it.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't turn him around.
Nope.
He just forced his way through it.
You couldn't
then
get behind him. That was the other thing. Like, if you
Yes.
were behind him, he knew, and he would turn around and look at you. Like,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it was such a, you couldn't sneak up on him.
That's where we're dealing with the smarts too. Like,
he was
I mean-
smart. Like, they're all very, very smart.
Yeah.
Like, they do create, I'm not gonna say a relationship, but like they know.
I would almost go as far to use the word intellectual on a cow, on a pig, because horses are smart, cows are pretty smart, but they ain't that smart. I mean, like, they figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Like, where a cattle, man, I would have run up behind it and spooked it into the trailer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you can somewhat do a horse that way too, but here's the deal. You referred to it earlier. Is this guy is 450 plus? We know he's 450 to 500 pounds. And one of my sayings always to my daughter is like, you can't force a horse.
Mm-hmm.
They're just too big. I mean, cows same way. You have to spook them, scare them, shock them, funnel them, something. You can't physically put them in a trailer,
Yeah.
or somewhere where they're not supposed to be. I mean, a sheep or a goat, you can pick that sucker up, throw it in there, but not these big animals. And he's the same way, 450, 500 pounds. You're not going to physically rope his neck or pull him in there, nothing like that. So that was the beginning of my deal where he about broke that thing. And I mean, it was just but I didn't want him to get away and lose the ground we had gained. That's what I
Yeah, the
felt
big
like.
thing you were saying was you were trying to make the woods feel like an unsafe place.
I would when and a couple of times he got back into that funnel with those panels, and I backed off. I'd stay in the woods.
Yeah,
because I didn't want him. I wanted him to feel good about getting in the trailer. I wanted to feel bad about coming back to the woods. So I'm trying to spook him, But anyway, fail. Didn't work.
This is all one day, by the way. So it just, we realized he was out. I mean, he literally was laying there. He was out. So
that was the day we were supposed to have him.
Yeah.
And we'd actually tried the night before. I went up there and sat patiently and almost had him in the trailer.
Yeah.
But anytime he'd see me near the trailer, he'd jump back out. So, and then the next day, me and you and Jennifer up there, and we almost had him loaded several times. And then we started like at 8 o'clock, and I called the lady like at 10:45, and I said, no, we ain't gonna make it. And so she give us the next day, I think, said we could bring him. And so tried again that night, the next morning or whatever. Couldn't get him. I said, let me just load him and I'll call you and see if you can work me in. And so they were great, because a lot of your processors, man, you miss your date, you're done, because they got so much. They're so anyway.
Well, in the middle of this is when he had ventured back over to the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the night that you couldn't go over, and you asked me, and I had just been out there, which was kind of silly. Just in the way of how many times like I would go do something and have to come back. But you're like, hey, can you go out and deal with this? And I said, absolutely. So I went out there and I met her for the first time. Mm-hmm. Sweet lady.
Yeah.
Sweet lady. She told me, I told her what we were trying to do. And she said like her favorite thing to do is just sit at her back window and watch him like out there the day. Like he would just walk around, and he's just kind of a funny looking character.
Yeah.
And my wife went out there one day to pick blackberries, and she's like, I don't see Boris out here. I'm like, he's out there. She didn't see him at all that day. But come to find out, like this lady that night tells me, no, he was like walking behind her the whole time. Just she couldn't see him. So he was following her the whole time that she was out there. Anyway, so she's like, he's out there. I walk over there. I said, Boris, go home. And he kind of gives me the side eye. I mean, if you knew him, you know what I'm talking about. But gives me the side eye, kind of looks at me, huh? And then like, go. And then he get up and he walked back like a sad little Eeyore walking back home. And so we stood there just talking. And she's like, if I had the infrastructure right here, I would keep him. Like she's like, I love him. Like he's just a sweetheart. And we agree, but well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
And and we talked about this when we started this farm. It's hard, but one of the things with livestock is they have another purpose. So if one's giving you a problem, there's no reason to take the fun out of farming and stress yourself out over a problem animal. And unfortunately, even though he's his demeanor, it was good. He's just going to be a
He's not a
problem.
pet.
Yeah, he's not a pet.
And my kids know that. I mean, my youngest is 3. She understands that. To what a level of a 3-year-old probably can understand that. She knows that he's no longer, and we'll get to that in a second. But like, she knows that process wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you look back to the beginning of this podcast, and what we're telling you is everything was, sunshine and rainbows with what we had set up.
Mm-hmm.
He was the outlier to the entire infrastructure, which actually helped us see a lot of things that went wrong that we weren't ready for. So it did help us, but we would have never have gone through any of this stuff that we're talking about if he hadn't came.
That's right. I mean, so we can look at the positive side of it. Even back to the food, we've got the food now is in a sealed container, which is where it should have been the whole time.
Should have been,
but we didn't have a problem like him, so we didn't need it. But we should be doing that for we should be doing that.
Yeah.
Other animals, anything else getting in it. So those are a lot of problems. Those fails we learn from and we fix them. Fail, learn, fix. So that was one too. One of the things about Jennifer told us when we finally did get this thing loaded in the trailer, she told us stay away. And not so much you, but me.
Yeah.
She was like, and my daughter goes up there with him, and she had been over there one time when we were chasing him through the woods, and he had actually kind of like skint her up a little bit or whatever. But I guess she he got all riled up when he seen her too, so she had to go away. But it was just Boris and my wife, and she gets him in the trailer with Twinkies.
5 minutes in.
5 minutes.
She goes out there, and
was it her or the Twinkies?
5 minutes, bro. And by the way, just to give you a little timeline here, at this point, 6 days.
Oh yeah,
something like that, maybe.
And hours at a time.
No, because it was a Saturday. Did we go a full week not being able to get him?
Yes, because we tried to get him loaded on a Friday.
Yeah.
Originally. Well, I tried Thursday night. No, Wednesday, because Jennifer and the kid was at church. And then the Thursday morning, we couldn't get him loaded. Tuesday, she said we could have brought him Friday, but we couldn't get him loaded. So now we had to wait a weekend. And we tried to load him through the weekend. We gave him Saturday off, but tried to load him on Sunday.
Yeah. It was Tuesday, because I remember I was up at the church. So I do remember it was a Tuesday when she went out there, and he said, hey, Jennifer's going to go out there and she's going to try. And she brings Twinkies. And this boy loved it.
Yeah.
Went in there.
Yeah. Rolled right up in there, shut the door, and then sends us a picture, giving us a hard time. So she's a pig whisperer now, so she's got her job.
He's been fed non-GMO food all of his life.
Well, right before he goes,
And then, we had to, get him a little sweet. Someone calling
you?
Yeah. Had to get him sweetened up, right? But yeah, we get him in, and the processor, like we said multiple times now, worked with us really well with, and two, this was, we said this before about we had to expedite the process. Now, this process, through it, we knew this was like a, just a emergency situation of trying to get a pig in, but we also knew that this was an opportunity to test out a processor and figure out, do we like them? Is this someone that we can use? We already, like I said, we already know our beef processor that we want, but they're years out.
Yep. So
it's always good to have a backup and test something out, and this was an opportunity to do that, and
it went well. I mean, they did a great job. Very informative about how working with you was really, really easy, super nice. Just worked with us so well, and able to flex a little bit.
Yeah.
But they worked with us with the meat too. I said, hey, this guy, because that's a thing too, like the taint.
Yeah.
You Google and it says, these bigger.
So this is a potential myth, and this is something that people have talked about for a long periods of time. Is if you keep their testicles intact as a male, there's a thing called boar taint. And this is where, because of their testicles and all of that going on, it taints his meat. It taints all of it. And the reason why I say myth is because there has been a lot out there that people swear up and down that they can taste it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some that are like, I can't taste it at all. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because if you go boar hunting, like actually like wild boar,
Yeah.
they're intact
Yeah.
and they eat it. So when you're talking about them working with us, that was one area we weren't familiar. We knew of it.
Yeah.
We've heard of that, of it being something, but they educated us a little bit too on like what types of cuts that we can try to avoid the potential boar taint, right?
They did. And the older gentleman's, done this since he got out of the military. I guess he's an older guy. And he said, it's true that you can't have that. He said, but one, there's cuts that it tastes, that you get that flavor in more than others. And it's a lot of the way that at the end, and we've talked before about animal husbandry.
That's right.
Taking care of them, being good to your animals, kind to them. He says, and we've thought this with cattle, or I've heard it, assumed it. He says, the way they're taken care of at the end of their life and the way they're slaughtered can determine a lot of if they got that taint flavor or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he did say because of his age and his size
to
not do some cuts.
Yeah,
But,
so he was 2.5 years old. That's how old he was.
well, and he said, but we'll bring him in here and let him walk in on his own. And once he gets to the kill floor, and they'll take their time with him. Once he gets to the kill floor, that he's done. So that's
like the stress levels that what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like
so
they're
he
10
said,
stress.
Yeah, he said if you're whipping him and prodding him and forcing him and get the animal spooked and get their adrenaline up,
Yeah,
that's where that taint will set in. He said if you kill him when his adrenaline's running high, that's in his meat, that's in his muscle, because that's adrenaline's pumping through his blood. So he said he could do that. And just to fast forward, you haven't tried any of it. You're picking it, you're half up today, but it's great. I don't flavor it. Now, we didn't do ham and we didn't do bacon. He said there's an armor, and that's where the bacon comes off of. And at his age, they have this armor for fighting in the wild, and that's where bacon comes from. He said that armor, you probably won't even be able to cut that with a knife.
wow.
He said because he's so big and everything, it'll be so
And
hard.
Part of it had to do with the boar taint too. We were trying to avoid, and that
Yes,
was an area that
exactly.
that he said. So we thought, or at least what we were told, was 450.
Mm-hmm.
450. And I'm gonna tell you, he didn't look for 450. When I originally pulled up and saw him for the first time, I had seen pictures, but until you saw him in person, you're like, oh my goodness. I remember when I brought him, we just started laughing. Like it was just like it
What
was
have
just,
what have we done?
what have we done? It was humorous, and but that's not the case of how big he was.
No. And the reason I said I'll post that one where I took a picture of him walking in front of my truck
Yeah.
is that's really a photograph that kind of gives you some relevance.
Yeah.
Of how big he is.
Yeah.
He's huge.
Yeah, pictures don't give it justice. Anything. I told my wife that too, until she came out and saw him, and she's like, "Oh my goodness!" I said, "I know."
So,
But how big was he?
like 683 pounds.
Yeah,
And he dressed out at 526.
yeah,
Big boy.
yeah. So once again, that going all the way back to the story of trying to capture him, that gives you an idea. This you showed me a picture. Him now. I know these cows. They didn't look the healthiest.
Yeah, those cows I compared him to,
But he sitting next to them, it was just crazy looking at that. But
yeah, they said the week before they brought in a cow or a pig that was 1,000 pounds.
my goodness.
But yeah, I took that picture. I rolled the window down and I said, "Hey, Boris, bye, Boris. Taste you later."
Yeah. And that,
Having a little fun. with him.
talking about fails, it's not a fail necessarily on our end. But I will say this. I'll say what I'm talking about though. We know we don't want to get a pig that big.
Yeah, no.
And so it's not a fail for us, but it was something that did happen to allow us to know, hey, we don't want it because our goal weight was going to be 250 to 300, maybe a little bit over 300. That'll be like our goal weight that we
Yeah.
want. The bigger they get, the bigger the pork chop, right? But seeing like him at that size, just knowing how hard he was to maneuver, and then the simplest things he'd break just because of just touching it.
Yeah.
So that was a good learning thing for us of knowing, hey, our goal, it sounds like it is the right way to go of what we're trying to achieve. And with Boris, we had to ultimately make the decision of like, hey, we're not going to be able to use him for breeding. There's just no way. We can loan him out, but at the end of the day, we know the processing is going to be the way that we're going to have to go with him.
I feel like Boris taught us more in 6 to 8 weeks than without him we would have learned in years.
Absolutely. And how crazy is that? Like, think about that. Because we brought him in, and we've said this multiple times to ourselves, is, we failed ourselves in how we did the wiring and all that stuff. And we know now what to look for and know what not to get into because of all the stuff.
Right.
But because we put ourselves in a spot that was kind of the wrong spot to put ourselves in, it kind of was the right spot looking back going, hey, it actually helped so much. Because we can look all day and say the whole thing was a failure, or we can look and go, oh, the whole thing was a success because, we processed them and that was our end goal.
Right.
But both of those aren't true. They're actually, there were failures, but we learned from the failures to be able to know, hey, how moving forward, how are we going to operate? And
yeah, I mean, and there was good out of it. We met the neighbor that we didn't know.
That's
my aunt,
right.
obviously,
That's
and she's she's on our team. She likes it. She enjoys somebody being over there.
And she's excited about the cows too. I mean, because it's going to run right up with her property.
Yeah.
And so it was really good. Having that conversation with her.
We
was
have
great.
the camera on, but we also, we love having her because we got eyes on the property too.
Yep.
She's watching, and that's
she was
good.
the one to let us know that the girls were out that one night. Remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of good come out of it. Like I said, he's taught us and advanced us. So he definitely had a purpose, a great purpose. That I believe everything happens for a reason, and the Lord's in control of everything. And
absolutely,
there you go, gift from God. Although at moments, I would argue that way, but like I said, hindsight's always, you look back and you can always see more than what you can see when you're in that predicament. And sometimes you go through rough seas and trials in order to get where you need to go. And even though he was hard for the small time he was there, he advanced us so much faster.
Yeah.
And time is one of those things on this lease, hopefully we have it for 10, 15, 20 years, but we're still, sometimes we get caught up in the 5-year deadline and we try to rush things, but he helped us move on along too. So, and we got a freezer full of beef or pork. So
yeah, the timeline thing that you just said is so important, because if we're looking at, we have 5 years to be successful, we have 5 years to grow something, we have 5 years, and the 5 years sounds like it's the end.
Yeah,
it's not. Like actually, the way that we are looking at it is we have 5 years to fail.
That's true.
We have 5 years to fail. Like, think about that. Like, because when we fail, we're learning.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, when I say fail, I'm talking about we're failing, but we're learning. So we have 5 years to make mistakes. After those 5 years, we don't know the circumstances that we'll find ourselves in on this property, but it'll allow us to turn around and take that to the next property and go, hey, what we learned within that first lease that we did, we were able to implement that in the next lease either on this property or the next lease on a bigger piece of property or same size, whatever, other piece of property, we can take everything that we learned and duplicate it now to a different level. So
Absolutely.
actually, instead of looking at 5 years being the deadline, looking at it the other way of saying we have 5 years to start. Think about it that way.
That's true.
That changes a whole idea of what we're trying to achieve here, because you and I have talked about, hey, within 5 years, we'll make a decision. Is this something that we 5 years of just fun that we got to be a part of and whatever, and we're making a decision, hey, we'll just, outsource all the animals, sell them or process them, and then we're done? Or do we turn around and make a bigger decision and say we're going to go bigger, and do something else with this? And so I think there's different ways you can always look at stuff. You can look at Boris coming in and wrecking everything, or you can look at Boris coming in and helping us see the flaws, and allowing us our eyes to be open to go, we know we're not going to do that again. And I will say, the ripple effects now that he's off the property, we still don't have a waterer fix. So like I said, we have to go out there every single day because what the girls have kind of done. So, there are obvious things that we're learning and growing in. So this episode really being all about fails, kind of be a little bit of a failure to say that, because the reality is it's really about what we learned and how we're going to press forward with that. Right, John?
That's right.
So like we say it's failures, but it's failures to learn. So yeah, a lot of growing through that season. It wasn't long. It was, me going in and out of town wasn't helping the situation. However, at the end of the day, looking back, glad we went through it, because we were able to see what we need to do better in, creating a new paddock for the girls, and all of that stuff, learning where to put the water, because that was a fail too, last week with it raining so much, where our food was on the down side of kind of a little bit of a slope, so the water was almost up to our feeders. So we know now we're going to put the feeders up at the top, the water at the bottom. So all of those things, like I said, this process being a learning process of, hey, what we're going to do next. So hopefully, I know for us, it's fun to talk about this, but hopefully it wasn't just entertaining. It was something for you to be able to apply that to a farm, to apply that to your job, maybe to your relationships, whatever it may be, of saying, hey, just because it didn't go how you wanted it to go, and you can rate that as a fail, it will be that, unless you turn around and say, how can I learn from this for the next time? So
as long as we fail forward.
That's right. That's right.
So
you're absolutely right. Well, it was fun having these reminiscing stories.
It was a little long, but there was a lot.
There's a lot of,
and there was a lot of it was a long week or so. We shortened some of those, but you got the main gist of it. We should have been wearing GoPros through that whole event. So
if we documented the whole thing, bro, that would have been crazy. But hey, like we've said before, we got some really cool things coming up. So please stay tuned. Go to our social medias. Hey, chat with us on social medias as well. If you have any questions or want to see stuff or want to send me a belt buckle, I'll give you an address. Whatever it may be, we would love to.
Yeah, and check Instagram and Facebook for those pictures of Boris.
Yeah, we'll post. We should put with the song, I will remember you. You know the song I'm talking about?
No.
Come on, bro.
Okay, you just killed our podcast. Like, nobody's going to ever listen to us again.
No, you know the song I'm talking about?
Don't ever sing.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
You know the song I'm talking about.
No,
but anyway, I can't wait to taste Boris. You have, I haven't. I can't wait. And And you said he doesn't have a
And no
taste to him,
taint.
so I think we
No.
avoided that. So
Yeah.
success
Yeah,
there.
I've tried the sausage and pork chop last night. They were great.
Perfect. Hey, once again, thank you so much. We got some really cool stuff coming down the pike as well. So thanks for digging in with us with the Local Farmer Podcast.
Let's grow together. See you. Bye.